So thank you very much today for accepting my invitation. And today we are going to interview Isabelle Laforest-Lapointe. Is assistant professor at University of Sherbrooke, and we are going to know a little bit more about her research and her passion for microbiology. So the first question is, what is your area of research?
Yeah, so my area of research, I would define it as host microbe interactions, and it's mostly centered on plant and human microbiome or microbiota. And from my training, I kind of tried to apply ecological theory and ecological dynamics to the study of microbiology. So instead of studying a single organism, which could be a microbe in this case, I tried to think of them as a community and how their interactions define the fitness of the host.
Thank you very much. Really interesting. So you are going to cover areas from plants, from humans, from the microbiome point of view.
Yeah, so I try to be 50-50, and I have like my Canada research chair and NSERC discovery are mostly focused on the tree microbiota and mostly focused on the leaves. But I also have part of my research that is supported by the CHU here. And so I want to study the evolution of the microbiome during the first few years of life and how it defines our risk of developing asthma and allergies, how it trains the immune system. So this was part of my postdoc. But I also have projects now with people that work on the colorectal cancer and the impact of microbiota. And I'm also very interested in establishing other collaboration in the human health world.
Perfect, thank you. I hope this interview helped to find more partners and more collaboration. So the second question, I think you already answered a little bit in this conversation, is how do you describe your research to the members of public?
Yeah, this is a really tricky question, and I've been doing that for a few years with my husband and with my family and friends. And usually I say I study microbes, and they always think I study the bad ones, but I tell them I study the good and the bad and the ugly of the microbes of both plant and human. And I try to think of microbes not as single organisms, as I said, but as communities. And I think that when we think about probiotics, people start to understand that our microbiota are not alone. It's not a single strain. It's not only bacteria. There's also fungi and viruses. So the public now starts to understand that microbes act as communities and not as single organisms. So it's beginning to be easier to explain my work.
Yes, I think that there is a more general understanding of microbiota. The other day I was watching an advertising of soap, and they were using the word the microbiota, microbiome, and all those terms. So it's going into the general population. I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and so when I started my postdoc, my supervisor, Marie-Claire Arieta, and her ex-supervisor, her former supervisor, Brett Finlay from UBC, had published this paper called, this book called Let Them Eat Dirt. And I think that it was really important for young parents or parents of young children to let us understand that interacting with nature and eating dirt is actually important for the development of the immune system. So I think that, and even more now with COVID and the isolation, I think people are starting to think also about the consequences of not interacting so much between each other and exchanging the good microbes or the ones that are not so pathogenic for us. Mm-hmm. So I think that, as you said, the general understanding of the importance of the microbiota is gaining speed.
Yes, I agree. So let's go to the third question. Do you remember that moment that made you study microbiology?
Yeah, it's really funny because there is some serendipity in my story. in my path in research, because when I finished my master in Spain, I had two choices. I could either go study the genetics of trees at Université Laval, where you're at now, or I could go and study more ecological dynamics of trees at UQAM. And I decided to go with the latter because I didn't want to do some genetics or play with DNA, and I didn't think it was for me. But when I started my PhD in Montreal, my supervisor actually became Steve Campbell, and he was working with microbes living on trees. And what put us together was actually the love for bioinformatics and biostatistics. So I kind of ended up doing some microbiology, not because I really loved microbes, but because I love stats, and the genomics field was just giving me so much opportunity to play with bioinformatics and statistics. So that's kind of the backward way I ended up being in microbiology.
Really interesting. So you are originally from Quebec?
Yeah.
But you did a master in Spain. Interesting.
Claro que sí. Yeah, so I actually wanted to continue my studies, but I really wanted to travel in the pre-COVID world. So I decided that Barcelona was just the best place to do a master.
Oh, yes.
So I went there and I did two masters. The first one because I just wanted to go, and then the second one because I wanted to stay longer. So that's why I ended up doing 3 years, I think, in Barcelona.
Oh, really nice. It's a beautiful place.
Oh, I loved it.
So let's go to the next questions. What do you generally tell a student or postdoc who is interested in working with you?
Yeah, I had to think about this one a little bit because we always tell so many things to potential candidates. But what I always tell everyone is that your master or your PhD is like a job. So your commitment to your own success will be reflected in the quality of your work. And yes, I will be present to help you go through the problems and the challenges, but the commitment and the dedication that you put in your project will really pay up for yourself at the end. So if you don't know what motivates yourself and if this is your passion, then it can become really challenging. So if people lay back and do the bare minimum, that's what you will get at the end of your master or your PhD. But if you take the responsibility of your own success and you really are committed to going to work day in and day out, and even finding little things that you can do in the days that you don't really feel like working, you can really end your PhD and your master with something that is great. And I think that understanding that is really the core of having success and having fun during your graduate studies. So that would be the first thing I would say. And then the second one, I would tell them that the graduate studies are really a test of character. It's not easy. It's not for everyone. It's definitely challenging, and every thesis is different than the others. And it's going to be stressful, but it is not supposed to undermine your health. So it's not supposed to challenge your mental health and your physical health to the point that you are crumbling. So if you're in a situation where this is happening, this is not normal. You should have support from your supervisor and your community, so that the graduate, your thesis is challenging, but it's also allowing you to stay healthy throughout the process. And the final thing that I would say is that not everyone comes to academia with the same support system. And so I think the first thing I want my students to understand is that everybody comes with a different kind of understanding from their own family, their own community, and friends, if they understand what's a master or a PhD. And many first generation students have very little understanding of how academia works and what are the ethics in academia. And many first generation also don't have full support from their family and have to justify why they are still not yet in a typical job. So I want my students to know that I understand that not everyone is in the same boat and has the same privileges. So I want my office to have an open door policy where if you're struggling with finances, if you need to have more explanation of the intricacies of the coda in academia, I want them to know that I'm there to explain these differences and these processes of dealing with interaction in academia. And I am here to help them as an ally to overcome these challenges.
Perfect. I really like what you said, and I'm going to now put it in my in my background because it's true. That's a really good way to explain that at the end you're working for yourself more than for the supervisor or for the system. You're working for yourself, and I think that indirectly, without knowing, I think I applied that in my career, and we all did. Like when I was in Mexico, you can see that the students sometimes were saying, no, because my supervisor is making me do this and that, but I never thought about that. I was like, oh, I'm doing it because one, I like, and two, as sooner as I finish, I can move on to the next step and I can have results, things like that. At the end is for yourself. That's a really good advice.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, the same about the struggle for first generation. Like when I published my first paper, I remember my mother said, "And they pay for that?"
No, Mom, I paid for it.
I laughed and I said, "Well, I published in a Cuban journal that is free, but we have to pay usually for publishing. So in Cuba, that's a limitation that we have. We have to go to those free journals that probably put the paper behind a wallpaper.
Yeah.
But it was the only option we had. We had no money to pay thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and for my perspective, so I grew up in Quebec, and both my parents had PhDs. So like when I was an undergrad student, my dad would tell me, so what are you doing next? And it kept really challenging me, but at the same time, he pushed me or helped me to try a master. And when I was writing to supervisor for the PhD, I was really stressed and I didn't know how to write and how to reach out to potential PhD supervisor. And he sat down with me and wrote the letter with me. And in 1 hour, I had received positive feedback, and I had both offers were come do a PhD with us. So I know I come from a very privileged family. So I want to tell the students that I acknowledge that and that I know that not everyone comes from that point of view. So just by telling them that, often they think, okay, she knows that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really important. And now thinking, yes, it's a process. I know that is a process that if you never did, the same happened to me when I was in Cuba trying to go out. I was writing these horrible emails that nobody replied back. And now I've been able to be in conference with those people that I sent email, and I even feel like, I hope they don't remember that I sent that email.
No, they probably don't. Now I see the amount of emails we receive as professors, and they don't remember.
No, they don't remember. The other day I was in a meeting, and there is this big professor from UK, and somebody said, "Oh, I was with this professor," and I mentioned, I sent an email to that professor. She never replied. But I understand why. My emails were horrible.
and now I'm trying to do five lines email, and it's not easy to do because often you have too many things to say. But if you keep it up to 5 lines, often the answer come quicker.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. So let's go to the next question. What do you tell to your trainees when they are graduating? So might be really soon for us.
So you started this year, or no, you started last year in summer?
Yes, it was in April, but I was only able to incorporate in the summer.
Yeah.
Because
So I started in January. And so what happened, well, you know, COVID and everything, but also it's been a year that I'm in position. So nobody has graduated yet from my lab. So I've never had to tell them anything yet. But I would definitely tell them to never forget to apply the 4 C's in any job, and that is clearness, conciseness, coherence, and confidence. And I think that with these 4 C's, whatever job you do and whatever is your position in the company or in a research center, if you apply these four qualities and principles, it will really help your productivity and your happiness. And I would also tell them that I would always be available for discussion and support in the future, just because for me, my former supervisor, Stephen Campbell from UQAM, was always available after I finished my PhD with him. And I cannot value or like put a value on the help this friendship and his advices has provided to me, because I've had countless situations that I didn't know what to do, or I just needed somebody that would understand the context, and he was always available. And so to be able to do that for my trainees, I would say, like, it's not because you finished this diploma today with me that our relationship is over. You know, I'm still there as a former supervisor to help in the future.
I think that's really important. Be there for the students and the trainees, because when I think in all the colleagues I have, one common thing is that they had a really good relationship with the PhD. Like, the success in the future comes from a really good relationship with or the PhD supervisor or the postdoc supervisor. But it's really important because at the end, they still are the guidance that we have until in the future that we became the guidance for the new generations.
Exactly. So I really I cannot wait to graduate somebody and like let them go on their path. But for now, like, I'm just starting with a few master students for now, so I'm happy with that.
Yes, it's the same with me. I'm trying to well, they are international, so I'm planning for the fall, because I know that the summer will be probably too soon, but we are starting the process slowly. Let's see how that goes.
Are they coming from Mexico?
No, from two from Cuba and one from Sri Lanka.
Really nice.
Yes, and then another one is here, Quebecois.
Excellent.
Yes, so let's see. I think that I will keep it 4 or 5 in the first 5 years, because then get too crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
So the last question, what do you remember about the first CSM meeting that you attended?
And I thought that question was really funny, because for me, I haven't attended a conference yet. I was supposed to attend last summer, and I was invited to give a talk, but then it didn't happen. So I really look forward to my first conference.
Hopefully met in
Hopefully.
Hopefully. I'm going to be positive.
Yeah. I am positive too. I definitely think this will have an end date, and I think that the 2 years makes sense for this pandemic to stop. But can't wait to meet people in person.
Yes, hopefully. We are having some good news about Canada producing the vaccine, so I think we will be able to do it. So that's it. That's all the question we have. Thank you very much.